execute gem operations using an in-core accelerator called the Timur that operates on tile registers. At the same time, modern servers can be equipped with high bandwidth memory, increasing the memory bandwidth we have in comparison with using VDI. The focus of this work is LLM inference in modern CPU servers. We found that LLM inference on Sapphire Rapids is typically memory bound. More than 90% of the time is spent in loading the weights of the large gems of the fully connected layers. To that end, compressing those weights using techniques such as partial quantization makes sense. Unfortunately, in-core gem engines offer typically limited support for sparsity and quantization. For example, the Intel Timur doesn't support sparsity at all and supports a very limited set of only 2 different quantization formats. If the weights are compressed using a format that is not supported by the Timur, for example, they may have unstructured sparsity or they may have an emerging low-bit format that is not yet supported by those engines, they need to be compressed online to either NCP16 or in tape format. Today, this is done in software using traditional vector AVX operations. To that end, we have 3 participating domains in computation. Memory, to load the compressed weights. Vector domain, to decompress the weights. And then the matrix domain, to use the weights to perform checks with the Timur. A natural question that arises is whether the compression can be evolved. To answer this, we perform the very famous roofline analysis. We compare the difference between the optimal and the observed performance for different compression schemes with increasing compression factor. We started from the DDR memory version of the Sapphire Rapids, and we noticed that the performance increases with compression. This is a natural result if one thinks that the kernel is initially bound by the memory bandwidth. Also, we see that the performance largely follows the roofline until the point of test. If we check what happens though in the HBM memory version, we see a different story. We see that the performance difference between the optimal and the observed performance increasingly diverges with the compression factor. This tells us that some unclosed factor lifts performance of the table, but that's all we have to do. We have to do manual profiling to figure out that what was preventing us from reaching the roofline performance was in fact the decompression. However, the traditional roofline fails to capture this bottleneck when more than 2 domains are involved. In addition, we don't have any analytical information about what we should do in order to alleviate the decompression bottleneck. For example, how much we should increase the AVX throughput. To better understand and accelerate LLM inference on modern CPU platforms, our paper makes 3 contributions. First, on the modeling side, we introduce the new roof surface 3D performance model. It models the interaction between vector units, matrix units, and memory. Also, importantly, its use extends beyond CPUs and LLM decompression. On the microarchitecture side, we introduce TEC, a new near-core machine learning model decompression accelerator. On the CPU accelerator interface side, we introduce TEPEX, the tile strengthener preprocessed load ISA extensions that enable speculative invocation of accelerators in CPU modules. I will describe each contribution separately, starting with the roof surface. When multiple domains, in our case the memory, the vector, and the matrix domain interact, the slowest one is the one that dominates and determines the final performance. We can take performance as a minimum of the 3 performance limits of the 3 different domains. To express the performance limit from each domain, we will use architecture-dependent parameters, such as the memory bandwidth, the maximum vector throughput in vector operations per second, or VOS, that the SIMD AVX units of the architecture can support, and the maximum matrix throughput in matrix operations per second that the Timur can support. At the same time, we introduce 2 new kernel-dependent parameters. The first one is the matrix to memory arithmetic intensity, or AIXM. It expresses how many matrix operations we can do per byte loaded from memory. To that end, this is very similar to the arithmetic intensity of the roofline that we are all very familiar with. The second arithmetic intensity that we introduce is the matrix to vector arithmetic intensity, or AIXM. It expresses how many matrix operations can be executed per vector operation. A high value of AIXV means that we can operations, and for a high value of AIXP, we are less likely to be bound by decompression. The final performance can be taken by taking the minimum of the memory bandwidth multiplied by the AIXM. This is the performance of the memory domain. The vector throughput multiplied by the AIXP. This is the performance of the vector domain, and the matrix throughput. We now have two kernel-dependent parameters. We can no longer have a performance model that can be visualized using two dimensions. We need one dimension for each of the two kernel-dependent parameters and one dimension for the resulting flows. The resulting model is three-dimensional. Performance is no longer bound by a line, like in the roofline, but by a surface. In fact, there are three subsurfaces, one for each of the three possible bounding factors, and performance points below each subsurface are bound by the corresponding bounding factor. We see that a lot of the compression schemes that were wrongly classified in the memory or matrix bound region of the roofline and were way below the roofline are in fact in the vector bound region and very close or exactly on the roof surface. This tells us that the performance limits predicted by the roofline are provably possible without architectural changes. But what kind of architectural changes do we really need? We can answer this using the roof surface, but we also introduce a simpler to visualize 2D representation of the roof surface, which we call the bounding region diagram or BOR, which is simply the projection of the roof line on the XY axis, or simply what we see if we look from the top. It doesn't contain flow information, but it tells us accurately for each of our kernels which is the factor that bounds performance. We see that most kernels are indeed bound by vector. As we start increasing the VOS, the line between the memory bound and the vector bound region will start tilting towards the x-axis, and the line between the MOS, the matrix bound region and the vector bound region will start getting lower. As a result, the vector bound region will shrink in size, and kernels will start getting out of it, escaping it, and thus stop being bound by the compression and starting to reach roofline performance. We kept increasing this VOS until we reached 4x increase in VOS, and we noticed that even in this case, some kernels were still vector bound. Even a prohibitive 4 times increase in the vector throughput of the architecture would not suffice for all of our kernels to escape the vector bound region. This is what motivated us analytically to design an accelerator. And an accelerator is a real core accelerator. This means that each CPU core is associated with a Deca processing element, and the CPU core will prompt Deca to read the compressed tile from memory and return the decompressed result to the CPU core to execute the jumps. Deca reads memory through VL2, but importantly, never writes to memory. We will now switch to the interface configuration, and I will describe how we can have high efficiency cooperative Deca CPU operation, which is achieved through, on the one hand, on a double buffering scheme. Each Deca bin contains 2 loaders and 2 output registers. At step 1, Deca will read the compressed tile from memory, use its vector pipeline to decompress it, and then write the decompressed result to one of the 2 output registers. At the same time, the CPU core can be reading a tile that Deca has previously decompressed and is now stored in the second output register, use it to execute AMX operations, and then prompt Deca to start the decompression of the next tile, which in our case is tile operation. Overall, the 2 operations, CPU operation and Deca operation, overlap for high performance. However, this double buffering scheme, we noticed that was not enough to hide all of the communication latency between the Deca and the CPU core due to the very high frequency interleaving between the execution of the 2 entities. We noticed that if we used what we had at that point, which is traditional invocations based on MMIO stores and loads, this was the root cause of the issue. For this reason, we introduced new special instructions that we call tile external preprocessor load or table, that both semantically write metadata to Deca and return the decompressed tile to a register in the CPU core when Deca is done. The important part is that they can execute speculatively, because DECA never writes to memory. We give a lot of more details in the paper, but due to time limitations, I cannot say more about this in this presentation. I will briefly describe now the high-level overview of the DECA pipeline, which consists of 3 stages: quantization, expansion, and scaling. First, we start with the quantization, and the quantization is performed by pre-filling a lookup table array with target BF16 values. This is done before the kernel begins. Let's say now that we have a 4-bit quantization scheme. What we will do is that we will use the 4 bits of the low-bit quantized scheme as an address to extract the appropriate BF16 value from the lookup table. Pop count circuitry ensures that in the presence of unstructured sparsity, we always read the correct data from the next input channel. Then we have expansion, which is responsible for padding zeros to appropriate locations of the output. To do that, we process the bit mask, we extract expansion indices, and we use a crosspath that is controlled by those indices. Finally, since some modern low-bit quantization formats such as MX84 may also use group quantization, this simply means that we have a group scaling factor that we need to multiply our weights to get the final result. We also support this in architecture with a multiplier array. Overall, the key takeaways is that DECA improves performance not necessarily by being able to execute more vector operations per second in comparison with the CPU, but by pipelining and coarsening the semantics of vector operations, increasing the AIXD of the kernels. And this is a learning from the roof surface. So what we did is that we said, okay, we will not execute more operations per second, but what we will do is that we will design an accelerator that needs less operations to produce an output type. Finally, DECA has the flexibility to support new compression schemes that can combine instruction sparsity and quantization without requiring changes in the hardware. We evaluate that work through simulation, using an internal silicon-validated simulator based on Sniper, and we modeled a 56-core Sapphire Rapid server with and without ATA. For compressed cell performance in isolation, we modified the Intel Linux SSM just-in-time compiler to inject tuples, and for end-to-end Llama 270 billion and OPT66 billion inference, we used the Intel Tensor Processing Premiums. We evaluate different compression schemes, including the MX84, BF8, and BF16, with density ranges from 5% to 100%, which means that's dense without sparsity, all the sparsity construction. The area overhead that we found for 56 DECA is less than 0.2% of the overall SPR time. Importantly, we use the roof surface for analytical design space exploration for DECA. The idea is that DECA has some structures, I can give more details, but you can find those in the paper, that need to be sized accordingly so that the kernels stop being bound by the compression, right? So this means that we want the kernels to escape the vector bound region, and at the same time we don't want to devote area in an unnecessarily large sizing that doesn't bring any performance benefit, because once the kernel escapes the vector bound region, there is nothing more that DECA can provide. We found this version, which we call DECA Best, and we found that this DECA Best version was 2 times faster than the provision version of DECA. You can see that the kernels are still in the vector bound region, and only 3% slower than the provision version of DECA at a 4 times lower hardware cost. I want to point out, all of this design space exploration was done analytically. We didn't simulate the different pairs to decide, we only simulated the different pairs to evaluate. Also, DECA offers significant speedups using PGX software compression sequence that can reach up to 4x for standalone compressed jets, and of 1.6x to 1.9x for Llama 270 billion and OPT66 billion next to them. In conclusion, in this work, we made 3 contributions, one on the performance modeling, one on the microarchitecture side, and one on the accelerator CPU interface side. The first is the roof surface 3D performance model that models the interaction between vector units, matrix units, and memory. Second, we present the DECA near-core machine learning model compression accelerator. And third, we introduce the tile external precaution load RPC extension that enables speculative invocation of acceleration. We demonstrated significant speedups for both compressed gems and isolation and LLM. And with that, I will conclude my talk. I will remind you that I'm looking for a full-time research position in the industry starting this summer. And thank you all for your attention.
Okay, let's go to for those who have a question, please come by to the front side of the microphones and come close by to the microphone and speak loud. Okay, now while waiting for the people, and I have a question. This is really good. And how, regarding the generalization, how your roofline and roof surface model ultimate computing domains beyond the metrics and background.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I don't have the time to touch upon this during the presentation, but the idea is simple. We have to express arithmetic intensities of a target domain with respect to memory and of each other domain with respect to the target domain. We will have an equation with a mean clause that we will have all of the domains in that case, and this can apply to many different settings. It doesn't have to be CPUs, LLMs, decompression, vector matrix. It could be, for example, another form of a digital signal processor that has some units to execute scalar operations and separate units for square roots, and we have a kernel that includes both. Importantly, the key idea is that the different domains should be pipelined. We don't want, this thing does not model separate accelerators, accessing memory in isolation. There is another model for that. In our case, they have to be pipelined. You could use it, for example, to model, let's say, you have an accelerator that has, for attention, that has separate units to do multiplications and separate units to do the softmax. This could also apply. Of course, if we have more than two domains plus memory, the visualization would need more dimensions than 3, but you can still use the equation to do analytical design space exploration or explore the protocols.
Okay, thank you. Any other question? No, okay, that's time for me. Okay, I have one question. So, what's your benefit would be beneficial to non-HBM-based systems?
Yes, thanks for the question. So the idea here is that if we go back to the roofline, we see that for the DDR version, mostly everything reaches the roofline except for some very aggressive compression schemes. But what someone could do is that it could devote less cores to execute the kernel. In that case, we notice that if we have, let's say, instead of using all the 56 cores, we will use only 16 cores for LLM inference, and then we will use the remaining, however many they are, for a non-bandwidth sensitive application. In this case, we free up cores. So someone could use it. It doesn't have to be HBM. It could be a lower capability server, or it could even be a non-server CPU. Or in every case, someone should do the roof surface analysis first to realize if something like that is needed or not.
Oh, thank you. So, any other questions? Okay, then hands up. Let's take the speaker once again.